Pay attention, hoop heads, because we've got hosts of the Four Seasons podcast for Ball is Life. Ryan Magdziarz and RotoWire NBA editor Nick Whalen with us for some NBA high or low. Dudes, are the following fantasy point totals and or betting lines too high or too low for tonight's slate around the association? Russell Westbrook, the highest priced player at $11,000. He's averaging close to 65 fantasy points over his last 5 games. Is he going higher or lower than that tonight at Detroit, Ryan?
I think this all depends on Bradley Beal. And I'm watching Bradley Beal's status as the day goes on. If Beal is in, I'm saying under for Russ. But if Beal is out, I'm going over for Russ. I just think Beal has missed, 2 or 3 straight games. I think if he is back in the mix, they're going to want to bring him in slowly, get his hit back to normal, and get him more touches. So just from not having the ball, if Beal is in, I'm going under for Russ.
Nick, how much of your decision here will weigh on Bradley Beal's status?
Yeah, a decent amount, but they did play Detroit 3 games ago. Westbrook went for 19, 19, 10, and he had 6 turnovers in that game. That was probably his worst stretch during this, kind of crazy inferno streak that he's been on of late. And Brad Beal played in that game. So he's already shown us that he has this upside with Beal in the lineup. But like Ryan said, I feel a heck of a lot better about it if Bradley Beal does end up missing another game. I mean, Westbrook without Beal in these last 2 games has racked up 35 assists. He has 8 3-pointers, 4 in each of the last 2 games. That's something that really hasn't been a part of his stat profile at all this season. Not something to depend on long term. But, if you're a fantasy player, you want to ride this shooting streak as long as you can. And he's also been good for 1 or 2 steals, sometimes more, virtually every night. So it's not just points, rebounds, assists. He's also getting it done on the defensive end.
Nikola Jokic, guys, another player north of 10 grand with his Nuggets taking on the Clippers. The large human being is averaging nearly 60 fantasy points per game, but has scored under 50 in each of his last 2. So he's human after all. Let's set the bar at 55 fantasy points tonight. Is he going higher or lower than that, Nick?
I think Jokic could bounce back. I think he could take advantage of what's a pretty banged up Clippers team, a Clippers team that's banged up enough that they're bringing in DeMarcus Cousins. And it's very much unclear if he's going to play in this game. I would guess he probably doesn't. If he does, I think that's a good thing for Nikola Jokic. Cousins has been a disaster this season, especially on the defensive end. He hasn't played in a month, so that's not going to bode well. But no Serge Ibaka, no Paul George, no Patrick Beverley. This Clippers team is not at full strength. We saw them take a really weird loss to Orlando earlier this week. So it's a friendlier offensive game for Denver without some of those guys in the lineup. Those 3 starters that are missing are 3 of their best defensive players as well. My only concern with this one is the pace. Both these teams are bottom 5 in pace since the All-Star break, so it could be a relatively low-scoring game. Fewer opportunities for Jokic to rack up those DraftKings points.
Ryan, higher or lower than 55 fantasy points tonight for Jokic?
Yeah, I'm going under. And Nick makes some great points and almost persuaded me to go over there with all the depleted Clippers. But I think it's going to be close. I'm going under just for the pace factor. Both of these teams play really slow. And Jokic's last 2, he's really cooled off. And we saw that trend a little bit ago with Giannis and a little bit ago with Luka. I don't know if it was a all-star break hangover or what, but Jokic has cooled off the last 2. I'm still riding that wave against 26th in the league in pace in LA.
Ryan, after averaging almost 44 fantasy points per game over his last 5, Hornets guard Terry Rozier, scary Terry, baby, his salary has spiked to $8,000 for the first time in a month. So if we set the bar for him at 45 fantasy points against Brooklyn tonight, is that too high or too low?
I think that's too high, and I'm taking the under. To me, Terry Rozier doesn't scream consistency. And never has in his career. I was looking at the prices, looking up this stuff just like a little bit ago. He was like $6,600 3 weeks ago. He's up and down. I know a lot of this LaMelo Ball being out has to do with this, but Hornets still have a lot of variables as far as ball handlers. Gordon Hayward, Devontae Graham, Malik Monk, I think, comes back tonight. He's probable. So I think that's too high for Rozier tonight.
Nick, what do you think?
I think the number is about right, but yeah, I'm with Ryan. I mean, it's not a great defensive team in Brooklyn that you're going up against, but the return of Malik Monk means that you're probably siphoning away, 5 or 6 shots that would typically go to Rozier, and maybe more. If Monk does get hot like he did in the last game that he played back on Friday. I mean, the only thing with Rozier, if you like the other side, is he has gone on these streaks a couple times this season. If you remember back in February, he had that 6-game stretch where he averaged like 31 points. It was hitting 5 threes a game, shooting 58% from beyond the arc, 55% from the field. So, he's certainly capable of putting these stretches together, but as Ryan alluded to, at some point it's going to come crashing down, and you don't want to be caught on the losing end of that game whenever it comes.
Of the player props available, though, guys, on the DK Sportsbook, Kawhi Leonard has the highest posted point total at 26.5. Is that too high or too low for tonight's matchup with Denver, Nick?
I mean, if we're trying to criticize the line, it's spot on. I mean, his last 5 games, 25, 25, 28, 23, 28. So you take the average and it's right around that 26.5 number. But I'll trust Kawhi tonight. No Paul George in the lineup, like we said. No Ibaka, no Beverly. This team needs Kawhi Leonard to carry it against a formidable opponent in Denver. And, he was able to put up 28 in a loss to Orlando. I think the Clippers come back and maybe don't win this game since they're so shorthanded. But I think Kawhi Leonard has to take matters into his own hands and kind of start to be more of a ball hog, I think, than he's been this season, especially with those guys out. So I think he does that tonight. I think he approaches 30 points. I think the Clippers keep this close, but ultimately probably lose to Denver tonight.
Ryan, what are you doing here?
I'm also trusting Kawhi. I think it's too low. No Paul George is huge, and I don't know. A lot of guys don't really like the narrative street. I'm all in on the narrative street. I feel like players know when they're on primetime television. This game's primetime, last game of the night on TNT. I think Kawhi, like Nick said, is going to show them whose team it is. They're depleted. I think he needs to step up.
Nick, what's your favorite bet on the DK Sportsbook tonight?
I'll throw out a couple. I like Sixers minus 9.5 at Cleveland. The Cavs have scored 86, 98, and 75 points over their last 3 games. Even without Embiid, I think the Sixers can take advantage of that. I like Devontae Graham over 22.5 points, rebounds, assists. He's gone over that number in each of his last 4 games. And I also like Nikola Jokic to post a double-double and the Nuggets to beat the Clippers. That's plus 145 on the DK Sportsbook. He has a double-double in 14 of his last 16. So that's a pretty safe bet if you like Denver to win that game.
Ryan, you got any safe bets in your eyes?
Yes, very safe bet. I love the under 8.5 points for Isaac Okoro. I don't know if you guys watch the Cavs much, but he's out there just doing cardio. He's just happy to be out there running around. He doesn't do much. And, 8.5 points would be a career night for him. So I'm going all the way under for 8.5 Okoro.